Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create an animal-human hybrid portrait in Photoshop. I recently did a series of human-animal hybrid portraits in Photoshop. You can find those on my Instagram at NucleLearn, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create that same effect. Now, if you want to follow along using the assets that I used, I have included those in a link in the description of this video. So go ahead and download those if you'd like, and then let's get started. All right, let's go ahead and go to File, Open, and in the Assets folder, I'm going to open this Aleski file. And this is a photo of a deer I got off Unsplash. First thing I want to do is just crop it. I'm going to go ahead and select the crop tool, and here under ratio, I want to pick 4:5. 4:5 is the vertical ratio for Instagram, which is why I've chosen it. All right, I'm going to push this all the way to the bottom and then take the bottom right corner and just move it up until the eye of the deer is centered along here. And I'm going to hit OK. Then I want to have a guide layout just to give me some center guides. So I'm going to go New Guide Layout and just do 2 columns, 2 rows with no gutter and no margin. I can do Command semicolon to turn the guides on or off. I'm going to go ahead and turn them off for now. The next thing I want to do is cut this deer from the background. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of the layer. I'm going to call this deer. And then under layer 0, I'm going to add a solid color. This is just going to help me as I cut out the deer. I can see what it's going to look like as I cut it out. Okay, so for the cutout, there's a few tools that I could use. I could use the lasso tool, just zoom in here and start making my selection. The problem with the lasso tool is if you go off, there's no way of correcting it. And also it's all just hand motions. If you're using a mouse, it can be hard to trace something. Another tool I could use is the quick selection. And the way this tool works is you just paint over the area that you want selected, and then it's going to use the Adobe Artificial Intelligence to figure out what you want selected. As you can see, it's doing a relatively decent job. If I hit Q, that puts me in Quick Mask. That kind of gives you an overlay to show what your selection looks like. If you go under Channels, you can double click on the Quick Mask and then change that to whatever you want. So something that might contrast better, maybe put it on 50%. There you can see how that selection's looking. Again, it's doing okay on some parts, but on other parts, it's really not doing a very good job. So let's hit Q again. I'm going to do Command D to drop my selection. So the other method is doing Select Subject. That's going to do entirely with artificial intelligence, try to figure out what you want selected. As you can tell, it hasn't done a great job. It's done okay on some parts, but for our purposes, we really need a good cutout. So this is not going to work. Let's hit Q again, Command D. The one other one I did try for this, and you can try it if you're using a different photo, is Focus Area. This will look for what's in focus compared to what's not in focus. But even this doesn't do a great job, and you have a very jagged selection. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'm going to do this selection by hand. And my favorite way to do selections by hand is using the pen tool. And the reason I like the pen tool, and make sure it's on path, not shape, is that it creates a vector path like this that you can then control and come back and make corrections to, adjust the angle of, and it's because it's a vector, this path, you can make nice curves with it. So this is my preferred tool. Just going to Command Z my way back here. And what I'm going to do is basically zoom in to about 200%. You don't want to zoom in too much, otherwise you'll start making a selection that'll take about 8 hours. So I think around 150, 200% down here is where I'm looking, is about right. You're going to get most of what you want in your selection, but obviously you won't worry about small little nicks like that. So we'll just start here and click, drag to get those control points that determine the curve of your path, and then just keep working around the whole thing. Now I made this curve here, but I don't want this because this is going to take a different direction. I'm going to hold down Option, just cut off that little tail, and then I can keep going how I want it, like this. And what I'm going to do is just kind of fast forward through this, but essentially I'm just going and making a manual selection of the whole deer, just clicking, dragging, and trying to get as close as I can to the deer. If I am going to fault, I'm going to try to fault on the inside rather than the outside, just so that I don't have some of that background coming with me when I pull this into a different environment. All right, that finishes our selection. Now I can do right mouse click, make selection. I'm going to do 0.01 and then go ahead and add a mask. You can see there we have our deer head nicely cut out. I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a smart object and then cut out, just with a lasso here, the antlers. And I'm holding down Option, which is, I always hold down Option when I'm using this tool. That way, as I'm drawing with the mouse, if I let go, it doesn't actually close my selection. It just turns it into the polygonal lasso tool. And then when I let go of Option, it closes it. All right, I'm going to do Command J, and we'll call this antlers. And what I want to do here is go ahead and add a gradient map above the antlers and then clip it to the antlers. Now the way a gradient map works, it assigns the left color to the darks and the right color to the lights. So I'm going to go in here, and for my dark color I want a dark red like this, and then for my light color I want white, and then in between here I want a hot kind of golden color, so something like this, maybe even brighter. And then somewhere in here I want kind of a strong, even more golden color, so something like this. And then we'll just manipulate these to get kind of a glowing effect, a gold glowy effect here, so something like that. I may even want a pure black just for the absolute darkest parts, but I think that looks pretty good. Okay, the next thing I want to do is take the gradient map and the antlers. I'm going to hold down Option and just drag up to make a copy and then merge those. So now I have a layer that's the antler glow. What we're going to do is make a copy of this, so Command J, and I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I'm going to set this to 100 and then put this on screen. And then I'm going to do it one more time, copy it, Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. This time I'm going to make it 400. And then we'll put this on screen as well. It's going to give those a nice glow. The other thing I want to do is adjust the lighting a bit on the deer to make it as if the light's coming from this antler. So let's go ahead and add a curve layer here. I'm going to clip it so it's clipped to that smart object, and then I'm just going to make the whole thing a little bit darker like this. And then on the mask here, I'm going to go on my brush tool, make sure I have black as my foreground color, and then just with a big soft brush paint out right around the top where that light would be hitting the deer. So just like that. So it's subtle, but it does help. Okay, next I want to add a little bit of light to the eye area just to make this eye pop out a little more. I'm going to go ahead and add another. This will be eye highlight. And I'm just going to put this on overlay, and with a white brush with a low flow, so maybe 20, just paint over this eye. I can also paint over any other areas that I want to have a little more light hitting them. So the tops of the ear and this eye. And I'm going to zoom in and hit this eye a little more because I really want to bring out this eye as much as I can. And then I also want to really accentuate that highlight, the eye highlight. So I'm going to go ahead and add another one, put this on overlay, put it above it, and with a flow of 100, just paint that eye highlight. I find that when you're doing these kind of portraits, whether it's of humans or animals, it always really helps to punch up the highlight or the reflection in the eye. It just brings that character to life. So something like that looks good. The other thing that I want to do here is just add a little more gold to the top. So I'm going to go in here in this kind of group layer stack and add a color balance. And in the color balance, I'm going to go to highlights and add some yellow, tiny bit of red, and then in the shadows, a little bit of red, and again some yellow, and then same with the midtones, just like that. And then we'll go to the mask, invert it, and then again with a white brush. This time I'm going to make my brush quite a bit bigger and take the flow down again, and then just kind of sweep over the top of the head here with a white brush, and it's just going to make this gold light from the antlers seem like it's hitting the top of the deer's head there. So something like that. All right, so that finishes the deer. Next, we're going to go to File, Open, and you can see here they have a portrait of a businessman. I also got this off of Unsplash, and we're going to cut out the businessman's suit, arms, torso, everything but the head and the background. I'm going to use the same technique for this. I'm just going to go ahead and with the pen tool make a selection around this. I want to be very careful to get as much of this color as possible so it looks like it's going to interact with our animal neck. So that's important. So cut out the neck, but make sure you leave all of the color that you can in your photo. All right, I'll fast forward through this as well. One trick here is it's really dark here, so it's hard for me to make a selection. So how do I solve that? Well, what I can do is first I'm going to go ahead and call this selection, just so that if I accidentally start making a new path like this, it won't overwrite what I've already done. But I don't want that path active, because what I'm going to do is just add a curve here and make the whole thing brighter. And if I have my path selected, it'll try to use that path to make a vector mask. So just make sure you have your path unselected, or do it before you start making your selection. All right, now I can go ahead, select that, click on the end there so it's continuing the same selection, and then I can keep going here. All right, there you go. That finishes our selection. Let's right mouse click, go make selection, and then I can throw away this curve and then add a mask to this layer. Before I go ahead and bring this into my other file, I do want to just clean up a couple spots here. I'm going to go on my main layer, go to my spot healing brush, clean up that spot, just kind of go through here. Make sure there's no other obvious spots. I think those are the main two. Can even get rid of a couple of these spots in its hand. That one there. Okay. All right, so now I can right mouse click, convert to smart object, and then just drag this into here. I'm going to put it at the very top. I can actually take all these layers, put them in a folder called deer, and then take my suit layer here. I'm just going to line up the neck where I want the neck to be, which is right about there. And here I'm just lining up this right here with the existing neck. So something like that. And then if I do Command T to bring up transform, make sure you have your anchor point turned on. And then if you hold down Option and start dragging, you'll see your anchor point is at the tip of your mouse. Put that right there where you don't want it to change. And then holding Option, you can just shrink everything until the other side here matches up with the neckline. So right about there, hit OK. You can see there's a little bit of an edge on there. I'm not crazy about that. So I'm just going to double click in here, put on a white background, and then in here I'm just going to clean up this black edge. You want to make sure when you make a selection of a white object that it has no halo, because that will become quite obvious as you start working with that in your layer stack. So let's make sure this little black line here is gone, like so. Let's make sure there's not one on the other side here. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead, throw away that white background, and then save this, and it will update in our file. There you go, that looks much better. All right, the next thing I want to do is color correct this suit to match up closer to this. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and add a curves layer. I'm going to clip it to this layer, select my neutral eyedropper, and just click on the jacket anywhere. That's going to make my fine corrections just to get rid of whatever color grade was on there. And then I want to bring up the lights. Now you can see my blacks aren't black. I want to fix that. I'm just going to bring the black so that my blacks are true black, matching the black here. So something like that. And then maybe something like this. I think there's a little too much red, so maybe we can just go into the red, take that down just a tiny bit more. Something like that looks pretty darn good. All right, the next thing we're going to do is take both of these, make a copy, and then do Command E to merge them. And this is going to be our glow copy. And what I want to do here is basically just select the dark parts of the suit. So I'm going to use a quick selection for this. We'll just do kind of, oops. Let's make sure we're on our quick selection. This, and then we'll just cut this out with a little lasso. Okay, that's good enough for my purposes. I'm going to go ahead and add a mask to this and then put this on screen. And really, I just want this to affect these like kind of edge highlights. So what I'm going to do is do a curve on this and just basically get rid of all the dark information. So it just has that light information there. I can even push that light information up like this. And then I'm also just going to make it black and white. So now we just have this adding a little bit of edge lighting up here, which makes sense if our light source is coming from the top. If we don't want so much down here, I can always just paint in my mask with a black brush like so. Okay, next thing I want to do is make this tie match up with these. Now, pretty easy to do that because I already have a gradient map of those colors. So what I'm going to do is just select my pen tool and select out the tie. All right, so now I can right mouse click, make selection, and I want to go on the suit layer here, take my gradient map, just drag that there, and then delete this layer mask and then add a new layer mask. So now this layer mask is just affecting the tie, but because the tie has no light colors, all we're getting is the dark end right here of this gradient map. So what I need to do is brighten it up. So I'm going to go ahead and command click on this mask to get that selection, and then add a curve layer underneath the gradient maps. Now if I push this up, you can see it's going to start getting the same colors as here. It's a little too strong. I want the highlights to be that color, but not the rest of the tie. So something like this looks good. And then to make this kind of integrate better, not have this weird edge, what I'm going to do is take both of these. I'm going to take them out of this layer stack. They already have a map, so I don't need them to be in there. I'm going to put them in a group, and then I can add a mask to that group. So we'll call this necktie, and then on the mask with a black brush, small, soft, I'm just going to go along the edge and kind of paint out the effect right on the edge of the tie where it meets the shirt or meets the jacket. Because this tie was red beforehand, it works just fine. Something like this, and just get rid of that kind of color clipping that's going on. There you go. All right, I like that. Next thing I want to do is just add kind of a glow halo effect around the edges of the jacket and even the top of the ear. So to do that, I'm going to command click on the suit and then hold down shift and then command click on the deer. That's going to give me a selection of both the suit and the deer. I'm going to go to the very top of my layer stack, add a new layer called edge glow, and I'm going to fill the selection with black. To do that, I'm doing Option Delete or Alt Backspace on a PC. We're going to put this on screen. You can see there's nothing there now. What we're going to do is add an outer glow. And I'm going to put this on 100% opacity and select kind of this yellow color here, kind of the brightest yellow color. And then we'll increase the size of this to probably around 70 pixels. And I'm going to copy this, Command C, and then go to Inner Glow, turn that on, paste that color in here, put this on 100%, and also increase the size of this. And I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller at about 62%. And then important here is that we go up to blending options and click this one, Layer Mask Hides Effects. So now when I add a layer mask to this, I can actually paint out where I don't want the effect. So first I'll just start with a linear gradient from black and kind of go up from the bottom. That's just going to get rid of it down here. I'm also going to do the same with the antlers here. Then I'm just going to take a brush with black as my foreground color and paint it out of everywhere I don't want it. So I don't want it on the antlers, and I don't want it coming from underneath because that makes no sense. It should really be the top of the ears, the top of the shoulders, maybe a little bit on the top of the nose there. So something like this. Even here on the side, it doesn't make as much sense. So probably something like this. We can kind of have a little bit of on the neck there. Something like that looks really good. We can take the opacity of this down a bit, maybe to about 65%. I think that looks really nice. And that finishes the suit part. The next part is the background. Okay, so for the background, let's go ahead and take everything here and we'll call this, put it in a group and call it character. Okay, and then for our background, I'm going to change the color here and I'm going to use 304151. So kind of a slate blue color, and then hit OK. Next, I'm going to go to my libraries, but this will be in the assets folder as well. I'm going to take Nuclei Grunge 1 and just drag that in here. I'm going to rotate it and just make it fit like this. There you go. Hit OK and put this on soft light at 20%. Okay, next I'm going to grab Nuclei Grunge 45, which is this one here, and do a similar thing, rotate it, and we'll just make this like that. This one, again, I'm going to put this on soft light, and this one will be at 45%. And then I'm going to go to my Nuclei Concretes, and in here I'm going to grab Nuclei Concrete 17. I'll drag that in here. For this one, I'm going to adjust it before I put it on soft light. I'm going to do that with a curve. So I'm going to do Command M, and here you can see most of the histogram information is contained in here. Now for this to be a neutral gray, this white line here and this black line here needs to cross in the middle of the histogram. So let's adjust that. Right there is the middle, but we can also make this more angled to have higher contrast. So again, where this white line crosses the middle black line is the important part. And then if you just bring these two closer together, you're going to get higher contrast. So maybe we do something like that. Hit OK. I'm going to put this on soft light as well. And then I want to add a vignette. I'm going to show you a cool way to add a vignette. So I'm just going to make a circle like this. And I'm going to right mouse click, transform selection. Just turn it so it kind of fits our shape more, it encompasses more of what I want. And then I'm going to go here and go to curves. And here I want to make it darker to about there. That's what my vignette looks like. So now I can go to my mask and properties, increase the feather to 300. And then invert the mask. And there you can see I now have a nice vignette. The nice thing about this is I can transform here, and it's actually just transforming my original circle. I can move that around, I can rotate it. It'll never have a hard edge, and it just gives me a lot of control of this vignette. I can make it bigger, smaller, whatever I want by just doing a transform on that mask right there. So that's my vignette curve. Now the next thing I want to do is add this circle element to the background. So for this, I'm going to turn on my guides. So let's go to Show Guides, which is Command semicolon. And I'm just going to start here with my marquee, circular marquee tool, hold down Option, and then start dragging out. I'm also going to hold down Shift so that it stays a perfect circle. And I want it about like that. And then we'll add another curve. And this curve, we're just going to bring up the bottom to about there, like so. And then here, what I want to do is Command click on the circle, then right mouse click, transform selection, hold down Option so it scales from the center. Just go out about, I don't know, let's say 108%. Hit OK. Then we're going to go to Edit, Stroke. I want a 20 stroke, and because our mask is white, I want this to be white as well, and I want it to be on the inside. And that's just going to give us that nice secondary line there. Now for this whole thing, let's go ahead and Command semicolon to turn off our guides. I want it to be stronger at the top and then get weaker as it goes down. So I could paint or make a gradient directly in this mask, but in case I don't like my gradient or need to adjust it for a different image, I'm going to put it in a group and then add a mask to the group. That's just an easy way to add a second mask to your layer. Then with black as my foreground color and a linear gradient. I'll just start from the bottom and go to about the top of his head there, just like that. Okay, so now we have our background in place. The last set of steps is all going to be to add a little bit of swing to the image. One trick is to do it with Camera Raw. And to do that, you're going to make a new layer, do Shift, Option, Command E. That's going to merge everything into this empty layer. And we can call this flattened image. And then I'm going to convert it to a smart object so that I can always go back and make changes to my filter. Here under Filter, I'm going to go Camera Raw Filter. And what I want to do here is under the basic curve, I can maybe add some contrast if I like, add a little bit of texture and clarity to the image, maybe go down to detail and add a little bit of sharpening, and then go to effects and add a little bit of vignetting, and then maybe even go to color grading, and here add a little bit of blue to the shadows, maybe a little bit of yellow to the highlights. And if I hit OK, you can see that just gives that image a final swing before you post it on social media. So here's the before and here's the after. And that is how you create an animal-human hybrid in Photoshop. Now, if you want to download the rest of the assets that I used for creating the other animal portraits, as well as a Photoshop template, plus additional grunge textures, brushes, foreground element overlays, curve presets, 3 actions, plus additional Photoshop training, I have put together a Photoshop compositing toolkit. I've included a link to that in the description of this video, and you can see it below. Right now I'm offering it for just $2.99. So go ahead, download that. There's a lot of great assets in there, as well as additional training that you can use to expand your Photoshop skill set, as well as your Photoshop toolkit. All right, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment. I do try to read them all. Share this video, turn on your notifications, and here's some other tutorials in Photoshop that you can check out. I'll see you next time.